Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this webinar hosted by Girls4Girls South Africa, taking a stand against gender-based violence. Sam, please drop the slide. Hi, everyone. My name is Rita Motlana, and I am the country team leader for G4G South Africa, Girls4Girls South Africa. We're excited to be joined by sisters from across the globe, 31 countries at the last count. And I would like to invite you all to introduce yourselves in the chat box, which should be on the right-hand side of your screens. Tell us which country you're from, and let's just say hey to everyone else. But before we formally start with our agenda, I would like to kindly ask that we observe a moment of silence for the late Zinzi Mandela, a fervent anti-apartheid and youth activist who kept her father's message alive during the dark days of political struggle in South Africa. She passed away at the age of 59, just 4 days before Mandela Day. May she rest in peace. So, who is Girls4Girls, and why are we holding this webinar on gender-based violence? Girls4Girls is a global mentoring program that seeks to empower girls to lead. We do this by partnering professional, experienced women with younger women and girls who engage in an inspirational manner on a variety of topics. These include sessions on building trust and teaching the G4G mentees to develop trusting relationships with other women. We cover courageous leadership, which helps the girls find and define their life mission, leveraging on their networks, which we call villages, while investing time wisely in information gathering, similar to what we're doing today. We also cover the art of communication, where the young women and girls learn how to communicate clearly and persuasively. We cover negotiations for oneself as well as for others, how to respectfully observe and understand the interests of the other person, but at the same time being able to win them over for your cause. We cover a session on public service, where we recognize that if we are to change the woman agenda, we have to step up and take ownership of the process. Again, just like we're doing today. And finally, the last module covers ethics and values in decision-making for everything that we do, whether it is serving as leaders, negotiating, running for political office. We must have an ethical and value-based approach. So that's what the modular program is about. Now, if Girls4Girls sounds a little bit political, it is, because it has political origins. G4G was founded by a group of women that were studying for their master's program at Harvard. They helped campaign for Hillary Clinton, and we all know what happened. She lost. So they took a pause and reflected and recognized that despite the fact that many women are finally making it to the top, the number of us are still significantly underrepresented at decision-making levels. That's the idea, to create a movement to bring significantly more women into the leadership space. So G4G has a twofold vision. First is to empower women and to propel them into the leadership space. But second is to create a pipeline of leaders so that never again can we say that we could not find a woman school representative, a board member, minister, or even a presidential candidate. We believe in empowering women to take decisions, be it at a personal relationship level, in the workplace, in sexual reproductive health matters, in business, in politics, in all spheres of life. But why would G4G want to focus on gender-based violence? Given the lockdown conditions, G4G South Africa decided to invest our 67 minutes of Mandela Day, representing Nelson Mandela's 67 years of activism, to take a stand against a serious issue that is facing women. So this session aims to be an informative one, but it also should be one that allows each of us, so whether it's a mentee, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a supporter, for each of us to identify at least one action that we can each take to fight against gender-based violence. So welcome to the discussion. Now, helping us do this today is a group of 4 remarkable women that I would like to ask for you to help me welcome. So Sam, I'll have the slides up. So first, we have Thando Gumede. Thando Gumede obtained her undergraduate LLB law qualification from the University of Witwatersrand in 2016. During her tenure as an undergrad student, she was recognized by Bain & Company as Mbogodo, one of the top all-rounded performing women in the entire Gauteng province. In 2015, she became an alumnus of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, their global startup labs, in which she led her team to win first place for a demo of a digital educational platform called Sky Class. This platform provides children from indigent communities with equal access to the same quality of digital education content as those living in privileged communities, something that is very relevant today during the lockdown times. Late in the same year, 2015, Thando was recognized by Barclays Africa as one of the top 100 brightest minds, not just in South Africa, on the entire African continent. Thando is currently a master's student at the University of Cape Town, specializing in human rights law and social justice, with a focused qualification on menstrual health rights, as well as women, children, and queer people's rights to access basic and higher education. Of note, Thando won the Innovating Justice Challenge Fellowship and grant from the Netherlands. She has also won Leaders in Innovation Fellowship from the Royal Academy of Engineering in the UK. And again, won the Letsema Social Innovation and Impact Award for her innovation, the Mteto Search Engine, which is a mobile technology application that uses artificial intelligence to address the current challenges related to school-related gender-based violence, relevant for us again today, and minimizing the consequences on data analysis. Thando has gone on to represent South Africa in London and Chad for her work around GBV. Thando is an innovator who is passionate about merging law, education, public health, my area, software engineering, and the fourth industrial revolution to conquer gender-based violence in Africa and across the globe. She recently created the Ubuntu Studies Online Academy to challenge systematic racism and patriarchy in South Africa and across the globe. She has also been a leader of South Africa's only feminist political party called Women Forward, wherein in the Gauteng province, she led them to receive the highest ever recorded votes for the party in the 2019 national and provincial elections. So that is panelist number one, Ms. Thando Gumede. The next speaker is Mara Glennie. Against all odds, Mara survived a life-threatening event involving grievous bodily harm. After she recovered, she founded Tears, which is an organization that provides support, a support network for victims of rape and abuse. Mara's aim is to enable victims of rape and sexual abuse to find the assistance, comfort, and compassion that they need. And when you talk to Mara, this comes out. For the period March 2019 until February 2020, Tears provided direct support to 88,217 victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and child sexual abuses across South Africa, and reached 44 million people in their public service announcements educating on GBV prevention. So Tears Foundation was awarded silver in social development in February 2020 by the Gauteng Premier for their services. Mara is passionate about women's rights and has been a crusader for societal issues over the past 6 decades, and the driving force and facilitator behind numerous development conventions and training initiatives to change the perception of the community and public in general around rape, abuse, and gender-based violence. Welcome, Mara. You're probably on mute. And I would also like to say, for Thando to just say hi. Sorry, I skipped on quite quickly. You're on mute, Thando. You're on mute, Mara.
Hi, Rita. Hi, everyone.
Sorry about that. Hi, Mara.
Hello there. Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
So it's so great to be here with these amazing women and everybody that's joining us. I'm just so excited to see all your names come up on the screen. I hope you have a fabulous day with us.
Thank you, Mara. So the third panelist is Basha Tlhapane. So Basha qualified and graduated as a professional nurse and has worked in the pediatric ICU at Netcare, Blauberg, and Milnerton Mediclinic since 2013. She specializes in pediatric health and welfare. In July 2007, Basha founded a non-profit organization called Women and Beyond. which provides support and services to women and children with the primary focus being on child health and welfare and care of children with special needs, as well as facilitating awareness campaigns. Following this, in December 2010, the No Shame and Legacy Program for Girls was launched at the Cape Town Convention Center. Basha is a Carol Boys Humanitarian and Survey Philanthropies Poverty Alleviation Award winner. In 2018, she was recognized as the Born to Shine Community Awards for 10 years of service and a Red Cross Memorial Children's Hospital Excellence Awards speaker and mentor. In February 2020, this is an interesting one about Basha, she successfully secured a spot as a Mrs. South Africa semi-finalist and is using the platform to engage with a larger audience on issues affecting children, especially focusing on young girls. Basha, welcome. You're probably on mute as well.
I've just unmuted. Hi, Rita, and thank you so much for the opportunity and the platform, and a hello to all. I'm busy reading all the messages here, and I'm quite excited. I'm so honored to be here, and I cannot wait for the conversation to start.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. Welcome. So the fourth of our panelists is Miss Universe 2019, Zozibini Tunzi, who is a passionate activist engaged in the fight against gender-based violence. Zozi, as we fondly call her, Zozi, is an ardent supporter of the hashtag #He4She, a social media campaign to changing the narrative around gender stereotypes. Zozi, through this organization, hopes to bring men into the activist space to help bring about equality. As Miss Universe, Zozi hopes to broaden the movement and bring more voices together on this platform to make a change across the world. Zozi is a proponent of natural beauty and embracing your authentic self. We talk a lot about that at Girls4Girls. Both the first Black South African to be crowned Miss Universe and the first Miss Universe to be crowned wearing her natural curls, like we all remember. Zozi wears her natural hair as an example to young girls. Zozi's message to young women is to take up space. During the competition, we all remember that, which spurred recognition from a number of people, including Michelle Obama, as well as Oprah Winfrey. Prior to winning the title, Zozibini was working at a prestigious public relations firm in South Africa and had previously worked in landscape architecture. So Zozi is going to be joining us a little bit later when it comes to her time slot, but wherever she's watching from, welcome Zozi. We shall ease you in as you arrive. So let's get started. And let's ease the panelists in a little bit. So we'll start with Thando. Thando, 3 things that inspire you. 2 minutes.
Oh my goodness. I'd say just one thing that really inspires me are young people, and their desire and their demand to be in a society that is far more or far better than it was when I was growing up. I'm really inspired by young people and their desire to push and to agitate for change. That's one thing.
Okay. And you stop at the one thing.
Just the one thing.
Let's move on to Mara. Would you give the 3 things? Well, anything between 1 and 3 things. What is it that inspires you? Help us understand you. You're on mute, Mara. You're on mute. Sam, could you help?
Am I?
I can hear you. Yeah.
I'm unmuted now. Thank you. One of the things that inspires me really is that I have the most amazing job. I go home every day knowing that the privilege that I've had in my life is to make a difference in other people's lives. No money can buy that. The job that we do sometimes is relentless and hard, helping survivors of rape and abuse, but going home just knowing that someone's life today changed because of actions you took is worth more than money can buy, and it's priceless. When I Joe's my degree at university. I studied business. But if I knew what I knew today, I think I would have done this earlier. I've only been doing it for 10 years. So every day is a blessing for me.
Okay. Basha, you're next. What is it that inspires you? You're on mute again. Please remember to unmute.
Okay, there we go. Rita, thank you so much. What inspires me is a platform like we have right now is what inspires me. The fact that we have an opportunity to have a conversation that we are having tonight is what inspires me. Because at the end of the day, when we continue the conversation, when we have a dialogue, and when we start talking, this is the only way we will see about change. Because with each and every one of us sharing and just being in a position to can impart knowledge and wisdom amongst each other as a community, as a society, globally, this is what inspires me. Because 5-10 years ago, we never had opportunities like this. We spoke about gender-based violence within very small societies, within very small sections, and there wasn't much of an impact. And this moment right now is exactly what inspires me. And then again, to add on what Thando said, the resilience that our young girls have, they endure so much and they thrive beyond adversity, and they are worth fighting for. And for that, I remain inspired every day as I do the work and see their life transform.
Thank you. And it is interesting. I think it's the silver lining in this COVID thing is that we would never have dreamed to be honoring the late Nelson Mandela in a virtual platform like this. But look at us, people from Cape Town, we have, the Gautengers, and then we have Zozi joining in from New York. We would not have dreamed this way. We would all have been in our little silos, not yet having, that global conversation, people coming from all over the world. So you're right that it is brilliant to have a platform like this. Okay, so let's get started. Now, a bit of etiquette. For the people that are participating, we're not going to be having any oral conversation with you, but what we're hoping to have is an active chat. So please, I can see the chats are just coming in. Please keep posting your questions in there, or your comments, say, hey, I agree, or, anything interesting that you're able to observe. If you have a specific question that you would like to pose to one of the speakers, there's a Q&A box that you're able to use. Please put your questions in there, and if you can, please specify who you would like to answer that question. But if it's just general comments, keep the general comments for the chat box. The Q&A box is where we're going to be extracting the questions for the speakers in the Q&A section. So we're going to have like 15 minutes for each of the speakers, and we're going to start off with Thando. So Thando, kindly take off your mic, or rather put on your mic so that it's clear. So the first round of questions. So Thando, we're going to talk about what is gender-based violence? And we specifically asked Thando to do this. She comes from the legal arena, but you also heard what her background is. So the first thing, at G4G, we believe in investing in information gathering years. So we always say, let's get it right. Tell us the facts, take us to school. What is gender-based violence? And what are its different shapes and forms that it takes? Which ones are most prevalent in South Africa? So just paint the landscape of gender-based violence for us in South Africa today. Thando?
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for that question, Rita. So before I can really begin to unpack what gender-based violence is, I want us to start right at the beginning. And starting at the beginning means that we need to look at what the root cause is for this manifestation of violence. And what we know now is that gender-based violence actually emanates from something called white heteropatriarchy. So a lot of people in South Africa and across the globe make the mistake of believing that colonization and slavery brought about racialized discrimination to the exclusion of all other human rights violations. And even here in South Africa, there's a common belief that apartheid was a mechanism of racialized discrimination on its own. And I just want to inform everyone who's listening, and not just for the purposes of South Africa, but just in general, that colonization brought about various manifestations of human rights violations that were intersectional, that were multiple, and that were layered. And we call this white heteropatriarchy. White heteropatriarchy is something that is unfair discrimination based on the premise of race, gender, sex, sexual orientation, ability, as well as socioeconomic class. And so what we see commonly, not only in South Africa, but across the globe, are diverse and different manifestations of white heteropatriarchy taking place. And what's happening is that because white heteropatriarchy affects people differently and attacks people at different angles, it makes people to be divisive. So people will, for instance, fight for, Black Lives Matter, while elsewhere people will be fighting against, gender-based violence, when in fact it really is all the same system of oppression. So now, what I want to do for purposes of this conversation is to narrow down our discussion to the biggest manifestation of white heteropatriarchy, and really the reason why we're here is a phenomenon called gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is the unfair discrimination and arbitrary discrimination of another human being based on their sex, based on their gender, as well as based on their sexual orientation. And of course, we understand that a person's sex refers to the biological fact of whether they are male, female, or intersex, whereas a person's gender is the social construct of how a person identifies in relation to other human beings. So what this means is that someone can be born male but identify as being a woman. Someone can be born as intersex and identify as being a girl. And it is very important for us to acknowledge the difference between sex and gender. And the reason why this is important is because, and I'll unpack this later, what happens is that we manifest gender-based violence in microaggressions where we don't acknowledge the fact that there are a spectrum of sexualities and a spectrum of genders and a spectrum of sexes. So it's very important for people to acknowledge that. The other thing is that sexual orientation refers to people's biological or chemical sexual attraction towards another human being. So a person can be born a male, identify as a woman, and be attracted to other women and therefore be lesbian. So when you speak about the spectrum of sexuality and sexual orientation, it's lesbian, it's gay, it's bisexual, it's pansexual, it's asexual, etc., etc. And usually the umbrella term that we have for people who are not cisgender and not heterosexual is queer. And that's these concepts are very important for us to note, because I'm going to unpack how we manifest gender-based violence towards one another. So white heteropatriarchy as a whole says that if you are not a male, if you are not white, if you are not heterosexual, if you are not cisgender, if you are not able-bodied, then you have no place in our society. And if you are not those things, then I am going to dominate you because you are weaker, because you are inferior to me. And if you reject my dominance, I am going to humiliate you, I'm going to indignify you, I'm going to abuse you, and in some instances, I am going to kill you. And so you know, South Africa has got, and please understand that the definitions that I'm giving are global definitions. They're not necessarily just, you know, South African definitions. So under the auspices of white heteropatriarchy, gender-based violence manifests itself in, you know, a physical manner. It manifests itself emotionally, verbally, sexually, economically, and it also manifests itself in microaggressions. But what I really want to touch on today, and what I think is super important for us to actually unpack, is how gender-based violence manifests itself in South Africa in ways that are, in fact, celebrated. So I think it's very obvious for us to know that killing someone based on the premise of their sexual orientation or based on their womanhood is wrong. But we also have manifestations of gender-based violence in our society that are microaggressions or that are misunderstood and therefore are celebrated. So gender-based violence is essentially about false notions of, you know, superiority over someone else. And what therefore needs to be understood is that in order for that superiority to function, there has to be an opposing ideal of inferiority. Therefore, in order for toxic masculinity to function, there has to be toxic femininity. And I'm going to unpack what toxic femininity is. But what I want to do is to look at the different types of manifestations of gender-based violence that other people may not necessarily be aware of. So I've got a list here of a few. One that we need to take note of is the initiation of boys, especially in South Africa, when Xhosa boys are forced to go or are celebrated for going to the mountain where their foreskin is removed. They are then told by someone who never raised them about ideas and ideals and perceptions of manhood. And what happens during that process, for those of you in the world who don't know, is that these boys are killed. During that process, a number of the boys die. They go to a cold space. They either die from the cold or they die from overbleeding. Some of them have their penises mutilated. Another form that I think a lot of people across Africa are aware of, or more people across Africa are aware of, is the virginity testing that takes place, especially in Southern African countries. We've got Swaziland that takes part in it, and the Zulu culture. Every year around August and September, we've got the March of the Virgins, where girls as young as 10 years old have women who assess their vaginas to see whether or not they are engaging in sexual intercourse. So from the age of 10, within the Nguni tribe, girls are taught that they are responsible for things like pregnancy. They are responsible for the scourge of HIV in the community, and they're essentially responsible for the demise of their community as a whole, and therefore must close their legs. Another form is the practice of female genital mutilation, which happens across the African continent and in other continents around the world as well. What happens here is that there is a common ideology that women and girls are not allowed to enjoy sexual intercourse. Therefore, their clitoris must be removed so they don't enjoy sexual intercourse. Another thing is, telling girls how to sitting with their legs crossed, how to dress, monitoring our bodies, the movements and the choreography of our bodies, telling girls how to behave differently after they've started their menstrual cycle. I remember very vividly being a young girl told that after I started menstruating, I should stay away from boys when I'm on my period to go and polish floors, and that whenever I'm menstruating, I must stay away from boys. Also, girls having less of an entitlement to go to school. So what happens is that in communities that are cash-strapped, where there's a decision about whether a boy or a girl is going to go to school, the decision often is that the boy is going to go to school. On top of that, because of the ideology that girls should not be getting an education, you have the pervasiveness of things like society not providing sanitary pads for girls. And in social welfare systems, there isn't an allowance or a fair discrimination of girl children to make sure that they have access to sanitary pads as well as panties, because a lot of girls in rural areas don't have panties and don't have access to water to constantly be washing their panties.
Yeah.
So we've normalized these types of forms of gender-based violence as normal. Another thing as well, and this is where toxic
Thando, let's just try and have a little bit of a conversation. So you've mentioned a lot of things. I think a lot of people that were tuning in thought that they were tuning in for what is usually in the press, the horrific rapes and things like that. And you've broken it down for us. I think for instance, when we talk about GBV, we instinctively think about women and girls. The first example that you gave actually related to the males. Is the legislative system in South Africa adequate enough? Does it cover all these things? That's part of my question. But I think what I really want to know is why they say to us South Africa has one of the foremost forms of legislation and programs in place against gender-based violence. But why does it continue to happen? What is it that leadership needs to be doing in order for us to address all those different forms of gender-based violence that you have just highlighted for us? So let's zero in on that.
Okay, well, let's go back to what are the things that are enablers of gender-based violence and where these norms come from as a matter of specificity beyond just white heteropatriarchy. They come from institutions like religion. They come from institutions like our culture. And you remember that with colonization came whitewashed versions of spiritual practices, came whitewashed versions of our cultural practices. During the apartheid regime, Verwoerd, who was one of the key architects of the apartheid regime in South Africa, said in Parliament, in front of everyone, that we note that Black labor is essential. Therefore, what we have to do is to convince Black people to read the Bible in such a way as to make Black women and women's bodies to be inferior, as well as to make Black people to interpret their cultures in such a way as to make women's bodies to be inferior. As a result of this, and I'm going to get to how it links to economic oppression of women, women, and especially Black women, were relegated to the rural areas of South Africa and were not allowed to come into the urban areas to come and work. The reason why this was done is because if Black women were to follow their husbands into the urban areas to go and work, they would reproduce families, Black stable families close to white families. And we don't want that. Destabilizing and breaking apart Black families means that they would be able to exploit Black labor and earn as much profit as possible. And this is important. This is where the whiteness and the Black or the racialized aspect of heteropatriarchy comes in. And it's important for us to not acknowledge that, because if we don't acknowledge that, then we'll find ourselves doing all of these movements over and over again. The reason why, then, to answer your question, Rita, we have not been successful in dismantling gender-based violence and patriarchy in our society is because we have not acknowledged where it emanates from as a matter of honesty and of reality. And we have not challenged the institutions of culture and religion that perpetuate the idea that a woman comes from a man's rib and therefore is subordinate to a man, when in fact a man comes from the vagina of a woman. And those, Rita, are the facts. And until we are willing to go to the Zulu King and to say, we no longer want girls having their virginity tested on a yearly basis, We no longer want Xhosa boys going to the mountain to have their foreskin removed so that they can identify better with toxic ideologies of manhood. You can put in as much educational programs as you want to. You will never dismantle patriarchy unless you challenge the institutions of religion and of culture that were poisoned by colonization, that perpetuate themselves in our society today.
Okay, so let me get this. So what you're saying is that the responses that we have in place are addressing things from a topical perspective, not addressing the root causal like you have just broken down for us. Okay.
They are not. And the reason why is because it is convenient for us not to do that. Remember who is in power, okay? We understood, especially after COVID-19, before COVID-19, we understood that we had a Black government in power. After some time, we realized that this is actually a Black elitist government. And especially after COVID-19, we realized that it was a Black elitist government that had white monopoly capital interests at the forefront and at the core. So it is not to the convenience of a Black male-led elitist government to think of all of the multiple layers of oppression that I just mentioned. When you have a hyper-heteronormative, hyper-toxic masculine government that is in charge, you're not going to deal with issues of queericide and queerphobia. You're not going to deal with the fact that Black women are subjected especially to unpaid care work and abuse in their own homes. We're not going to deal with the fact that religion and culture is where all of these ideologies and all of these norms are motivated and are fueled. So it is to the convenience of Black men to turn a blind eye because they benefit from it, especially. And I have to say this because we are in Africa. It's important for us to contextualize our discussion. And let me say this, Rita. What Black men, so Black men sit on an ivory chair where they actively oppress Black women because they've exchanged power with the hands of white monopoly capital and white people. But what Black men need to understand is that the ivory chair that they sit on does not belong to them. And they exercise only a delegated power. And it is only when a Black man is murdered by the state police and the army and is humiliated and indignified by white monopoly capital do Black men finally realize the fact that that chair that they sit on, where they oppress their own women and children, was never theirs to begin with.
Okay. So you've really taken us to school. And this is what we wanted. We wanted to be able to grow our knowledge base. I think you've just taken us in a completely different direction and challenged us to think about the norms or our understanding of gender-based violence. We're going to come back in the Q&A, Thando, and I'm going to be asking you, you've broken it down for us, but I'm going to be asking you for one or two things that we as women can do to start addressing those deep root causal issues, whether it's us at an individual level or whether it's at a society level. But before we leave Thando, I want to ask Rivka, who has been tracking some of the chat. Rivka, if you can unmute and we see you, what are people saying about what Thando, so eloquently broke down for us? And thank you, Thando. It was, I think, for me, a very honest, deep, painful discussion that we have just had. Rivka? Rivka, we can't see you. Huh? Hey, Rivka.
Good evening, Rita.
Hi. So what's happening in the chat? What are they saying about Thando?
So the key issues that have arisen from Thando's exceptional speak is the seriousness of the issue. Consensus has been gathered around the validity of her points, her depth of insights, and the way in which share shared information that seeks to empower all individuals. The key points that have risen is her intersection of white heteropatriarchy and how the structure of patriarchy forms a system of oppression. People have felt that they've been schooled, that they've been learning, that they've been engaging, and they are starting to unlearn their own systems of oppression and are acknowledging the ways in which socializations cause harm in different ways, and the fact that we need to reassess the role of ourselves as individuals within our society.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's what I'm running through some of the comments as well. If I pick Hape is one of our mentees. She says Thando is shining the light on certain things that we tend to overlook. GBV is indeed broader than we think. Thank you, Thando. And that's what we wanted. For me, it's a joy to be able to see the mentees engaging with the mentors as well as people from across the globe. So thank you, Thando. We'll be continuing with the chat, and thank you, Rivka. So now we're going to move on to Mara. Mara, please remember to unmute. And we're now going to slightly change the discussion. Unmute, Mara, so that we can hear you. Okay. So now we're going to talk about what actions and options are available to victims of gender-based violence. But before we do that, there's a snippet of a video that we wanted to share, which is from Mara's organization, Tears.
It's up to us to stop sexual assault, to get in the way and stop it before it happens,
to get a friend home, safe.
It's up to us to look out for each other,
to not look the other way.
It's up to us to stand up,
to step in, to stop sexual assault.
It's up to us.
Contact Tears now on *134 *7355#.
Thank you, Sam. And the reason we're actually providing those numbers is because if anyone does need to reach out, that information is available. Just ask in the chat, and I think it's going to be routinely published. So, Mara, Glennie, welcome. Thank you so much for making the time to be here with us. At Girls4Girls, there's a concept that we talk about. We always say, tell your story. For us to impart messages as mentors, it's different standing like we're in a classroom and I say, here's a PowerPoint presentation. What we ask is to see a piece of you. Can you share with us your journey to what it took for you to found Tears, the organization we talked about earlier?
Thank you for the question, and I'm very pleased to be able to share that with all the viewers today. So I have suffered from intimate partner violence that nearly cost me my life. And the first journey I want to share with all of you was how it made me feel. I felt ugly. I felt alone. I felt ashamed, even though it wasn't my shame. As women, as Thando explained to us, we are taught to take the men's shame or the perpetrator's shame. I felt ashamed. I felt a failure. I actually couldn't go on with my life anymore. Not only had I been physically hurt, but I was emotionally broken. So the story that I want to share, the first one, is that as part of my recovery, a friend invited me to go and work in England for a while because I wasn't in touch with my life here. I just was hidden away in my home. And in part of the trip of planning to go to England, I left via Cape Town. I decided that I'd been hiding away for 5 months and that it would be a good idea to learn new makeup because I hadn't been doing this stuff. I had hated myself so much. So I went into a place in Claremont in Cape Town and I said, show me how to do my makeup. And as I sat there, the woman said, I can't help you. I can't help you because you're crying all the time. And I said, I'm so ugly. No one's ever going to love me again. And I actually just can't do this. So the first message I want to say is that when you have been abused or raped, you need to find your own self-worth. You need to go to someone who can talk you through the situation, who can help you find the healing that you need and help you to actually be able to look in the mirror and say, as I said at the beginning, I love my life. So one of the things that I do when I give talks is I wear my crown. I'm pretty gutsy doing that with all the beauty queens on this program, but I want to tell you all that I learned to love myself. So my message to every girl there watching is put in places where you can help yourself and learn to help yourself. Do gym, go out somewhere. Don't live your life trying to please a young man or your parents. You need to come to terms with pleasing yourself. And I don't mean that to be a rebel. What I mean is you need to be okay with yourself. You need to look into the mirror every day and say, I did the best I could do today. And you can't live up to anybody else's standard. And forgiveness of yourself, because although you were not to blame for your rape or your situation, we are taught as women to take that blame. Don't take the blame. Nobody ever deserves to be raped or abused. So how did I start tears? That was your question. When I went to the police station to report my abuse, I was in a bad way. I was physically hurt, but I was more emotionally shattered. I could not believe that this would happen to me from someone I was married to, because this, to throw in a fact here, most violence is caused by someone we know. It is not the dark parking lot or the felt shortcut. It is somebody you know, your grandfather, your husband, the pastor, the pastor's wife, because it's not only men, it can be women too. So I went to the police station, and unfortunately, the lady was extremely unhelpful. And I was crying in the queue, and I went home, and I thought, I just want to die. This can't be my life. So I didn't die. I did get well. It took me quite a long time. When I got well, I thought to myself, what should have happened when I stood in that queue? Because quite honestly, people who complain really cheese me off. We can all make a difference in some way. So I decided that when I got well, I would reach out to other women and help them. So I developed a service where on any phone, anywhere in South Africa, you can dial our number and you can get help. So we have that number now, and I'm proud of that because we've helped thousands of women over the years we've been going. But what I want to also say to the young girls who are watching, put your crown on, look around, stand up to your friends, because you know, bullying in school is also abuse. And bullying often leads boys to do raping. And it can be over any reason that's maybe the girl's dress. Well, if she has a poor dress, ask her if she needs help. Because we don't reach out. People didn't know what to say to me. They were embarrassed. And even now when I go to places and I say, I started tears because I'm a survivor. That means, and they don't know what to say. Guess what? We need to learn the right words. We need to really, really start caring about our next door neighbors. So the last part of the question is, what can we do about rape and abuse? So the first thing is, someone tells me that's happened to them, the very, very first thing, and I'm underlying this point, I believe you. I want to help you. Those are the words people need to hear. And at Tears Foundation, we will help you if you're a sex worker, if you are transsexual, bisexual, or whatever, because we are not against anybody. We are against rape and abuse. We stand ardently on that, and I will help people, and our organization will. Because, you know, as our previous speaker said, we do have certain amounts of conditioning in our life. When I started Tears, I had to realize, well, maybe I'm not as friendly with transgender people as I should be. And I made a point of educating myself on their needs, and I reach out to them. And it is very, very important for each one of you, if you have a friend in distress, to be there for her. So around the world, we are told that it takes a woman 7 tries, seven tries to leave a marriage or an abusive relationship. Why would it take 7 tries? Because we don't teach young girls to live on their own. You live with mommy and daddy and you go into a relationship. We need to teach women to fly. Have your own flat, share with a girlfriend. Be young for a while before you take on the role of being a mum or a partner or whatever. So we need to teach women to take their rightful place. The next thing that you need is they don't leave because they've got nowhere to go. Offer them a place to stay. Offer to help them move. Do you know how many people stay in a relationship because they don't have any skills? So girls, learn, get a qualification, whatever course you can go on, be like a sponge, go out and take that course because you need to be able to earn your own money. To take that job that we were talking about earlier, you have to have the skills. So there's nothing wrong with being a filing clerk, but it's much better to be the managing director. So that's what your aim should be. Put your crown on your head, put your vision up on the vision board and say, I want to be a managing director. But you don't get given that task. You have to work for it.
Okay. No, thank you so much, Mara. I think you've actually like leapt ahead, because I was going to use this segment to ask about, you know, the practical things that we can do as individuals to support people who are affected by gender-based violence. And you've been very clear about some of them. I think similar to Thando, what you're saying is we need to change the way we see things. If you don't like transgender people, ask yourself why you don't like them. If they're affected in gender-based violence, by gender-based violence, and you say that you're against it, how can you, when you don't want to recognize groups that are killed because of their sexuality? So that's one, I guess, addressing the norms that we have within our heads. But you've also talked about the app that you have at Tears. Just tell us a little, again, I'm looking for practical. Tell us a little bit about the partnership that's in place with Namola. For me, Namola is actually one of the apps that I have, and I tend to tell every young woman in my life to make sure that they have with them. And again, just for everyone's information, there's a pack that we're preparing that everyone will be able to access that has in there the lovely leaflet from Tears that actually gives a step-by-step how to support a woman or any victim through going to the police station and just being there for the person. So there's a really nice set of tips that are provided in there. But just some of the innovations that Tears has that we should know about, and where can we access these? Because if we want to support someone, we need to know where to find these.
So thank you for that. We have a website, www.tears.co.za. We do have a plan for leaving an abusive relationship on that website that you can download. I personally view that web every single day. So if you send a query to me, you'll get an answer from us. The next thing that I really just wanted to say is that when you need help, you need it now. You need it right now. Your life might be in threat. So I did a partnership with Namola, which is a free app on my phone. And I especially have put my service onto USSD. The reason I did that is I spent 30 years working in the townships. So it's an area I know a little. And one of the things I realized is that I wanted to reach the poorest of the poor and the richest of the rich. So the poorest of the poor don't have money on their phone. So Namola is a smart app, and on our phone it's a USSD app. So it's a totally free service. So if you phone Namola through us, you will get an immediate person on the phone phoning you back and saying, how can I help you? So it saves lives, and we have saved lives. So if you want to download the Namola app yourselves now, today, that would be Namola, Namola, and it's a free download. And I urge you absolutely all to download it because it does save lives. Now, we get a printout every day of every person who's called us through Namola. And you can choose, because I know, have been in an abusive situation, that sometimes you can't talk. So you can dial the number and select that we should call you tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. And that's what we do. Every day we call back all the people who've asked for help on our Namola number.
So something that, Mara, you don't even know I'm going to talk about this, but as part of the registrations, it was yesterday, one of the young ladies reached out to us and just shared. She just wrote her story of having gone through rape and put it on this email. And I didn't know what to do. I mean, we're managing registrations. So I quickly shot it out to the Tears team, and I said to them, this is gut-wrenching. By midday today, Tears had already reached out to her, had already given her direction. So for me, I think what I appreciated is that there's a human face and that you're rapid with your response, because I think sometimes the victims don't ever get to report or don't ever find solace and support because of the time lag between, when the incident happens and then, when the support comes through. So I think we appreciate that. We didn't know it, but you were actually tested in the process and you delivered. So thank you so much, and kudos to the team at Tears. So all the information is going to be shared in the chat box. I'm going to ask Karima, who is covering Mara. What are folks saying about Mara and Tears? What is the chatter in the chat box?
So I think firstly, hi everyone, I'm Karima. Firstly, I would like to thank Mara, and I think a lot of the people on the webinar as well. It's been really inspiring to hear your story and to learn about how you've turned adversity into something that can help others. I think that's been the general theme across the chat. Everyone's loving your crown, Queen. So Queen Mara, we just hope that you can keep the work going. Also from our Girls4Girls members, we've had quite a lot of comments around courageous leadership, and that Mara is a true courageous leader. Those that are with G4G will know that courageous leadership is one of the lessons we try and teach the mentees. So thank you for sharing that, Mara. You were completely aligned with Girls4Girls message on courageous leadership.
Thank you, Karima. Okay. So we are running a little bit late according to my agenda.
Yes.
We are supposed to be starting with Basha.
Yes.
But the fourth panelist is going to be running late if we don't switch. Basha, would you mind if we start with Zozi and then we come over to you? Do you mind?
Not at all. Not at all.
Thank you so much for being gracious. Zozi, if you're here, please turn on. Hey, how are you?
Hello, I'm fantastic. Thanks. How are you, Rita? Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us. Sorry we're running a little bit late, but let's get you on board. Were you following a bit of the conversation?
Yes, I joined in a little bit when Mara put on her beautiful, fantastic crown, and I was like, yes, queen. That's when I came in. I think I came in at the perfect time. You look so beautiful, Mara, and your story is so touching, and your work is incredibly touching as well. Thank you so much for everything you do.
So, Zozi, before we even get started, I don't know whether you're able to see the chat box. It is going mad. Someone screaming, hi Zozi, Zozi, hi.
Oh, hi everyone.
Someone has just fainted. My queen, Zozi, you are loved. I can't even tell you what it meant. Even when we spoke about it with the rest of the panelists, you are treasured in South Africa. Yes, you look beautiful, but what we treasure is what you hold dear to your heart, right? So let's talk about it. We have all heard your call against GBV, gender-based violence. So please share with us, what is your vision for addressing gender-based violence? And I think we can't only ask for South Africa. You are Miss Universe. What is your gender-based violence vision? the globe, I guess.
Yeah.
What goals do you have, and what is it you intend to do to get there?
I think, Rita, for me, again, incredibly hard to ask just one person. I think it's such a huge thing that we should all be a part of it. But for me, I think my ultimate goal and vision would be if we could get gender equality included in the syllabus in schools. That for me would be one of the most amazing things to ever come out of, our country. And so if I have to work every day, daily, in order for that to happen, then, it's definitely something long term for me that I'm hoping to happen in the future. For now, I don't know what steps I could take towards to get there. But I know as soon as I'm done with my reign, as soon as I'm back in the country and I'm able to tackle these things, that is the first thing on my agenda. Making sure that I talk to all the right people to see what steps can we do, to get this syllabus, to have gender equality studies at a very young age, looking at primary schools, because this is something that we lack so much. Whenever people ask me, what do you think we should do? I always say, the first step is we're always asking each other amongst ourselves as women what we can do. And I think it's so important for us to start including men and young boys into the conversation, because they are a huge part of the problem. And if it's difficult to get through to adult males, I'm calling on all the men, because when all this gender-based violence started rising up, we had a couple of South African men saying, "Not in my name." So I'm calling all those men who said "not in my name" to start taking responsibility as well, to start educating their young boys on how to treat, women the way that they should be treated. If we start there at a very young age, I think these boys will grow up to be, the boys that we need, the men that we need in the future. And until it can be included in the syllabus, I think just starting a campaign just around the country and seeing if we can take it globally as well, to start hosting classes and workshops for boys specifically, to start educating within our communities before we can take it to school. But yes, Rita, ultimately for me, my biggest goal and vision is to have it in schools, like be taught as a subject and as a study, because that's really how we can start rooting this problem.
So what I love about it is that the idea is not South African centered.
No.
I'm originally from Uganda. I'm just thinking this can work in East Africa. It can work in West Africa. So I think it would be great that you work out the model. Yes, we start off at home, but definitely we look at it as something that can be rolled out at a bigger scale, because I love it for the simplicity of the idea that it is. And yes, it starts at home. It's what we do to our boy, to our boy children. Okay, during the last, and this was our favorite video of you, during the last round of the competition, you moved all of us by talking about the importance of teaching young girls about leadership and how important it is for them to take up space. That became a mantra, right? And now we had a joke on the Girls4Girls mentors WhatsApp group, because you were talking about people taking up space. It's what we talk about. G4G about empowering girls to lead, and we're always talking about making space at the table. The mentees in East Africa the other day said, if they don't give you space, you bring your own chair, or you make your chair.
You crash the party and put in your own chair and force yourself at the table.
There you go. So for Stella from Uganda, I hope you've heard how Zozi has taken it to the next level. So Zozi, please tie it together for us. How can we jointly address the empowerment of girls and women in leadership roles, whilst also addressing gender-based violence? So it's now trying to put the two things that are dear to you, the getting women into the leadership, young girls and women into the leadership space, but I guess also addressing the gender-based violence. How does it come together for you?
For me, Rita, I think you can't have one without the other. You can never address, the economic empowerment of women and women in leadership and gender equality without looking at gender-based violence. You can never do that. And so for me, I think it's things that go hand in hand. It's interesting that you actually asked me this question, because I think just last week I was reading research on the connection between the empowerment of women and gender-based violence. And, there were conflicting ideas of, certain people were saying the empowerment of women could cause the rise in gender-based violence, while other people were saying the empowerment of women could decrease, gender-based violence. And it was so interesting for me to see, because when they spoke about how it could increase gender-based violence, they spoke in the sense of, once you empower a woman, economic empowerment and any kind of empowerment, the men becomes threatened, in the home, because now all of a sudden you are becoming this empowered woman. And it becomes intimidating for them, which leads, I guess, to gender-based violence. And at the same time, I'm saying, why can't we then look at this model and use it for the better? If now we're saying we can't empower women because we're so scared of the violence that's going to come, then that's the root of the problem. Then it means we'll never have women leaders. It means we'll never have women in power because we are scared of, dying at the hands of intimidated men. Once again, they're intertwined. And so whenever we speak about women empowerment and leadership, we have to speak about gender-based violence, because women can never get there without getting to the root of the problem first. And so for me, I think that's how those two things link, Rita. And I'm not sure if I'm answering your question or if I'm hearing.
And you know what's funny is that you probably even answered it in the original response, because for a man not to be intimidated, it starts at home. I think about my own family. When my dad came home and said he wanted a cup of tea, he never said the girls should get it. If the brother happened to be the one sitting in front of him, he was the one who went and got the cup of tea. Same to the family that I'm married into. My mom-in-law always says it, you're all my children. There's no difference in between them. And we see it reflected. So yes, it starts off at home. And I think you started to address it there. So I know you're short of time. So we're going to ask you, please say as long as you can, Say as long as you can. But we're going to ask you, at Girls4Girls, when we are talking about the art of communication, we did a description of it earlier on. We talk about the fact that when you're given a platform such as this one, you have to use it to your advantage. As a woman leader, you have to take advantage of it. So before you leave us, I'm going to ask you, what is your call to action? What are the one or two things you want to rally South Africans and the rest of the world around to help us start moving forward together towards addressing gender-based violence? What is your call to action today?
The education for me will always be the biggest thing. I know we want so much change to happen. I always call on world leaders. I always call on governments to, the world is built on such patriarchal systems. We all know this. Most of them are not in favor of women or the safety and protection of women. And so whenever I speak, I really like to bring that up, to kind of sort of implore, our governments and our leaders to take a relook at our policies and our laws and see, what they can do to make sure that they are in favor of women and their safety. The other day I was on Twitter and I was reading how difficult it is to actually open a case and have it rolling. It takes forever. It's too much energy. It's too much time. And it's those little things that need to be looked at. If I'm going to be discouraged to report, what are the policies? What are the laws? Somebody needs to go back and look at that and make it easier. And this is just one example of so many things. And so I guess I'm taking this opportunity to whoever's listening, or it might get to anyone, to actually, world leaders, the government, somebody do something. So that's my first thing that I want to say. But also, I also want to say, sometimes you don't have to be the government to govern. You can do something by yourself at home. And so it's so important for us to educate each other, around each other, about certain things. Like I said, men, when you are sitting together, what exactly is it that you are talking about? Is it for the betterment of women in the country? So that's what we can do individually as well. Make sure that we are educating each other around ourselves about the right channels, what to do. Where can I go to go get information on how to help a woman who has been abused? What can I do as a friend? I think that is my call to action, just to be aware, pay attention and to listen and pay attention. I think
it starts there with the awareness. If you're proactively thinking about it, what in this moment should I be saying? How should I be handling it? It makes a lot of sense. But when you talk about changing the laws. I think we also need to step up. A lot of the laws have historically been written by males. I think this is where we're going to need clarity, and it's going to take a little bit more dissecting so that we are no longer on the sidelines asking for things to be done. We are the ones who are stepping up and making things.
Which takes me back to your second question, because you asked about, women in leadership and gender-based violence. If we had more women in leadership, they would actually be a part of formulating these policies and these laws, which would then, eliminate a lot of things. So definitely women need to be brought to the table. They need to be included more in order for us to dismantle all these systems that we have had that have been created like ages ago by, old men.
But we also need to be active. One of the things I say to the mentors and mentees is that I think we've faced a bit of disappointment. Sometimes space has been created for women at the table. The question is, what have we done when you're at the table? Did we take that opportunity and use it for myself and my family, or did I use it for the greater good? So I think for me, that's the consciousness we are talking about, being able to be present and saying, not selfishly, how will I gain, but how can I make it work, for the bigger women agenda? Thank you so much.
I agree so much. Thank you so much, Rita. But before we end my session, because you did speak about what do women do when they finally get to the table. And I just want to remind everybody listening today, and this is something that I always say, I like to remind people of, the South African women of 1956, when they marched to the Union buildings, because I know we're going to be celebrating Women's Day on the 9th of August. They marched to the Union buildings, and when they did that to fight for, the freedoms and equality of women, I think most of them knew that they weren't doing it for themselves because it was maybe late for them, and they were thinking about the future generation of women who were to come. When they did that, they did it for us. And so it's so important for us to remember that those women passed on a baton for us, this generation of women. And so that's why it's so important for us to listen, to be aware, and to be intentional in our actions and making sure that we are not being irresponsible with this baton that has been passed on to us. And, for us to continue with that spirit of the women of 1956, to say, listen, these women did their part as women fighting for me. And so now it's my turn to do my part for women of the next generation. Do your job and then pass on the baton to the next generation. So yeah, I think that's just my last message. Be aware and know that you actually do have the power and use it responsibly.
Thank you so much. You're an advocate for Girls, whether or not you know it, because that's exactly what Girls4Girls is about. We bring women who want to give and teach of their stories and the lessons and the experiences that they have had, and share those with the young girls so that they never have to go through some of the negativity we have. We've gone through. We are looking, I think Zainab, who is one of our mentors, says, pay it forward, which I think is what
pay your dues forward, absolutely.
There you go. Thank you so much. I hope you stay on. It was a pleasure having you, yeah?
Thank you so much.
The chat box is going crazy. So actually, before you disappear, Kinelwe has been covering you. So Kini,
hi.
Hi, what are people saying? We saw the one who fainted. What's happening?
Yes, Natasha Ali fainted when she saw you.
Okay.
We'll check up on her just now. So a lot of people are agreeing with what you said about teaching boys and men. A lot of people are also saying that you and Thando actually speak about the same thing. The foundation of it all starts at home, in your community, and educating men, but also empowering women. So a lot of people are saying that. A question somebody asked is, how do we do this without being labeled feminists? Because being called a feminist usually comes with bad, negative connotations. So that was one question that popped up for you.
You see, unfortunately, most of the time there's nothing you can do about what other people call you. But what you are is the most important thing. So we don't have power to control other people. But, when you think about feminism, the reason why people are so scared of feminism is because they think women want to be more or to get more power. And that's not what feminism is about. Feminism is about, let's be equal. I don't know why people are fighting equality. You know, that's what feminism is. So it's not a dirty, ugly word. It's saying, listen, let's dismantle this patriarchal world that we live in and actually be equal. That's all it is. It's calling to equality. So if somebody calls you a feminist, it's not necessarily a bad thing. So you shouldn't feel horrible, you know, about it. But yeah, you can definitely, people have been called names. People have been called names. You know, freedom fighters have been called names. Women who fought for women have been called names, but their work continues to live on. So I guess it's just something that we have to accept, which is bad, but there's nothing wrong with being a feminist is what I'm trying to say. Don't be scared of being labeled that.
Thando, put on your microphone and say what. You know, I can see Thando is raising her
like this.
Thando, what is happening? You have,
Listen, everyone, the constitution of this country is a feminist document. I study it, and the people who drafted it were feminists. Don't ever get it twisted. Feminism, as Zozi mentioned, is about the relentless, the unrelentless pursuit of equity between all human beings.
Absolutely.
And that's something that we should be fighting to protect and something that we should be fighting to achieve. We should be adopting an intersectional feminist approach in every single space that we're in. Unapologetically feminist.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
There
it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to be a feminist.
Not at all. But I see where they're coming from.
I see it too. I understand.
If the environment spends the word or spends the concept, then you can see where that connotation comes from. But this is why we say, and I don't know whether it was a mentor or a mentee who was saying that, but if it's a mentee, that's why we are creating this platform. It's for you to come and feel comfortable with women who can say, proudly feminist. So whoever that is, keep Girls for Girls close, as well as the women in this circle, yeah? So thank you so much. Now, we're going to, thank you so much, guys. We're going to move on to Miss Basha. Basha,
Yes, I'm here, yes.
Perfect. But you know that before we talk to you, we're going to do something a little bit different. Actually, we are now going to interact a little bit with a wider audience. So for all of you, there's a poll that's coming up. Sam, if you can get the poll launched. Thank you very much. So to the audience, the participants, start answering the questions that are coming up. So the first one, what do you think of the image? Should I post that image? Should the person in the image post it on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, or not at all? Okay. Okay. And feel free to keep going on to the next set of questions. Okay. Okay. So that is the first response, yeah? So what do you think of the image? 61% think it can go on Instagram. Sorry, are you guys able to see the results, right?
Yes, I'm able to see the results.
Okay. 21% say Facebook, a bit on Twitter, 4% say none. Okay, let's get the second question up, Sam. Okay, so can I make it my profile picture? What's the response? Would you? Yes? No? Maybe? Okay, are those the responses? I see the entries coming slower. Some people still responding. Okay, share the results. Okay, so yes, 63% say yes, 17% say no, you can't use it as your profile picture, and then there's 20% that they're not very comfortable with it. Next question, Sam. Next question, Sam. Okay. Question number 3. What's wrong with the picture? Nothing wrong. Too much makeup. Okay. 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 So the majority. Okay. So let's see the results. Okay, so we have 83%. It's a very liberated group of participants. Nothing wrong. They say nothing wrong. 16%, however, say too much makeup. Okay, I think there's one more question. One more question. Okay. So if your answer was no to not making it a profile picture, why not? You will be bullied. Men will harass you. You're considered to be naked. Okay, okay. Results are still coming in. Don't yet close, Sam. Okay, okay. I think we have them. Please share the results. So the majority said you will be bullied. The next, so 46%, and then 30% said men will harass you, and then 23% said you're naked. So of course, this is a smaller group of people that are responding because it was the majority that said they wouldn't have a problem having it as their profile picture. Okay, yes. Let's close the poll, okay? Thank you very much. So Basha, welcome.
Yes, thank you so much, Rita. Yes.
So let's, you're gonna address what we just saw in the poll. Your session is on personal and collective actions that women and young girls can take to fight GBV. So the first question to you, what needs to fundamentally change for us? I know that Thando had started to address it, but what fundamentally needs to change for us in order for us to see a change in GBV? And what are the biases that we hold, even we as women, that need to change for us to start opening our minds to address gender-based violence? Let's go for it.
You know, I love what has been discussed thus far with regards to raising awareness, which is one of the strongest links that we have when it comes to making sure that we are on the same page when it comes to communication. So, you know, when the problem starts at home and the problem is addressed as something else rather than what it actually is, then that is where the problem comes in. We always talk about support. We always talk about reaching out. We always talk about telling somebody. We always talk about, you know, taking action, or we are wanting to take action against gender-based violence. But I want us to bring it back a little bit home. So on the poll, the picture that I took is a picture that I decided I wanted to randomly give it to everyone, both men, women, on social media, within the churches, within different communities, within different society, because I wanted to get their feedback on what is it that they think of the picture. I never mentioned gender-based violence. I've never said anything. I just said I wanted to find out what they think of the picture. So number one, majority of the response was that, you know, this picture is inappropriate and someone of your age cannot be taking pictures like this, and you are too naked, you have a lot of makeup, and a lot of concepts came from a society of people that we are assuming could be a representation. In actual fact, these are people that if you have to walk into a police station, that would be a social worker. So it would be a social worker that tells me that you cannot post this picture on social media because it is too revealing, and you are, you know, you are enticing men when you are dressed up like this. You are inviting to be bullied, you know. So you, and this is a social worker. And an educator, one educator in particular said to me, you are a bad example when you are a woman of your age and you take a picture that is so nude and you want to put it on social media, what are you teaching our children? And bear in mind, the conversation was not even about gender-based violence. I was just asking them about the picture. They know that I'm a part of a Mrs. South Africa, so I presented it as an innocent picture. What do you think of this picture? But what came out of it is exactly what we are talking about today. So I was able to just add on to all the information that I acquired from the religious aspect, where it was said that it is wrong of you to take a picture when you are not dressed, because it's a very you are not dignifying your status as a married woman. And I'm also married to a pastor, so you cannot disrespect your husband like that. And what would the congregation say? What would the people say? So what was more alarming was what the women of a more mature age, their response to that picture. That was the problem, because these are women that we are wanting to be there as a support structure to their young children, to their young girls in particular, when it comes to addressing gender-based violence. And so these are women that are saying, if you put this picture out there, you are then saying it's okay to be bullied. You are then saying that you are exposing yourself. So bear in mind, if anyone says a bad word to you, or if someone starts stroking you, you are more inviting. It's too. There was a lot of things that happened around the picture. And majority, and I'm so happy that we have, a team and a community today that saw a different aspect of the picture compared to the picture that when it was issued into the community at large. When I got the response of, you shouldn't even use this on social media. This picture cannot be taken anywhere because you are going to disrespect your religion. You're going to disrespect your culture. You're a mamfundisi. You are, as a person in the society, you are a leader in the society. You cannot be seen on the internet with an image of this nature. And this is where I realized that we are seriously sitting with a big problem, and yet we are saying we need help. So if I'm going to the police and I'm going to report a gender-based related violence, who is going to help me if you think the way I'm dressed is the reason why I got abused?
And so there's a common trend that's happening here. We're all talking about changing our mindsets and re-examining some of, the norms that we hold that may be restricting us. We might be saying we're against gender-based violence, but we ourselves are the ones who unknowingly are actually enabling it to happen. So just share with us, your organization, Women and Beyond, you work with young people, and I know that's what your passion is. How are you working with young people in the gender-based violence space? Could you share with us? There are a couple of programs that I know that you've been running that I'd mentioned earlier on. Basha, have we lost Basha? Okay, it looks like we've lost Basha. While Basha is trying to come back on, could we have, who is covering Basha? It is Valerie. Valerie, I think Hello. Basha is going to log off and then she's going to log back on. Valerie, if you can just give us maybe a summary of what people are saying so far.
I think most of the things that people are saying is how absolutely beautiful Basha is looking, and how her boldness is so fierce and beautiful. A few comments, many comments about being a queen. There's a lot of surprise about the judgment that she took in terms of the photograph, I think, and someone was actually saying that even as a social worker, that was actually against social work principles to be able to judge someone like that. And then some comments from Basha mentions the intersection of religion, gender violence, a theme that is worth deeply interrogating, which is what Basha was just about to start on, unfortunately, before she got cut off.
Yeah, I know. So some people are even asking, like, why were they saying that she was naked? Did I miss something? Is it the hair? And Basha can come back and tell us why she wears that hairstyle. So she's completely dropped off, and I suspect it might be network. could be ESCOM. But while we allow her to come back, maybe it's time to start fielding the questions. I am looking at the Q&A. There are 34 questions in there. So we're going to jump a little bit ahead while we wait for Basha to come back, and we'll pick up the conversation over there. I'm going to ask Rivka, who is covering for Thando, are there any specific questions that are being raised in the Q&A box for Thando? So Thando, a couple of questions coming through for you.
Hi Rita, there are a number of questions fielded at Thando. In order to introduce the topic, let's start with one key question from Jabulani Simulani. Thando, please explain what toxic femininity and toxic masculinity mean.
Okay, thank you so much. Before I answer that, I saw that there were a couple of questions that relate to the statement I'd wanted to finish off later, and it's also going to address this question of toxic femininity. So the other forms of gender-based violence that we tend to celebrate that are very problematic, I had enumerated a couple earlier, but I didn't finish my list, and I think it's very important for us to actually speak to these. So the idea that a man has to have thousands and thousands of rand before they can be eligible to settle down with a woman that they love is really a form of violence against men. And girls being groomed to partake in unpaid care work in their homes and being forced to drop out of school. For those who don't know what unpaid care work, it's all of the duties that are homebound, the domestic duties that are usually thrown over or tossed over for girls to do. When someone falls sick at home, it is expected that the girl would sacrifice her entire life to look after that person who's ill. Another thing is the poor protection and payment of all work that is associated with womanhood and femininity, like nursing and domestic work. And I think we also need to look at the poor protection of women's rights to abortion. These are all forms of gender-based violence. The automatic changes of women's surnames to their male counterparts, because society assumes that women have no legacy that they want to leave behind. Also the failure to decriminalize sex work, the exclusion or the systematic exclusion of women from the formal economy, as well as the use of the words faggots, morphis, febe, bitch, whore, prostitute, as well as using very violent means to try and correct someone's sexuality if they are, for instance, gay or lesbian. If you've ever partaken in any of these things, you've partaken in acts of gender-based violence. But I think the most important one that I want to highlight is the systematic exclusion of women from presidential political leadership. Literally in this country, we have evaded having women in political power. Women who were very much suitable and highly qualified to take on those positions were excluded from taking on those positions. One of them being Umam Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, as well as Umam Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, based on the premise, especially with the latter, that she was married to someone and therefore would be an extension of that person. I see Basha's back, so I'm going to give her an opportunity to continue.
Yeah, and so just a time check. We've already gone past 7:30. We were supposed to finish at 7:30. But let's have Basha continue.
All right.
Sorry about that.
So sorry about that. I'm actually sitting in the dark. I'm so sorry about that. I think I've seen in the news that we're not going to have any load shedding.
On a webinar last week, and they said to us, you do not apologize. Whether it's for the technology, whether it's for the electricity, it's not you that did it. It's beyond your control. Thank you for quickly coming back online. So you were just about to share with us what it is that you do. And I can see that some of the questions in the chat box, they're actually saying to us, can we speak to the issues on the ground? There's someone who has made a comment. So I think the question to you was actually quite relevant in relation to some of these comments. What is it your program is doing to address the gender-based violence, specifically in relation to the younger population?
So before COVID, we go to schools and we raise awareness with regards to what an overall gender-based violence is, according to age appropriation, we give presentations to girls in primary school, and we teach them about, what are the other societal things that could affect them, not just necessarily looking into the fact that the schools are in farms or they're in villages or in disadvantaged communities, but also the fact that, them being a part of that class, a part of that group, they are more exposed, they are more susceptible to all these other violences that are, I know that a lot of people are not aware of how rife gender-based violence is in farms and also in squatter camps and informal settlements. And these are communities that we always go to make sure that we educate them, because that is where most of the problems are. So majority of our cases, like now we have hit 3,000 cases since the beginning of the year, but now the numbers escalated during the lockdown, because now we have seen that, finally, people that were hiding behind the fact that, this doesn't actually affect them, it's actually even, they are more exposed, if I could put it like that. They're exposed from the spaces of cases that we are now given, temporary custodies, because children have been known to be sexually assaulted by relatives, family members, pregnancies are coming up, all the other medical issues that has to be addressed are now, in the naked, if I can put it like that. So before COVID, it was something that was completely silenced. So that is what our program does, the legacy program for girls. We go to schools in different settlements and make sure that we educate the girls, especially on the importance of getting medical help, why they should go to clinics and why they should go to hospital. Not so much about the legalities, because bear in mind, most of their communities are very far from police stations, from all the other resources that, a girl would be, or maybe a family would be sort of closer to that particular support that we normally talk about. So the notion behind it is also to make sure that also the churches are aware as well. We try to go into the churches and we speak to church leaders, we speak to both men and women in the church, because we're trying to address also issues where, these young girls are actually victims within these spaces that are considered to be safe. And that is where our strongest point is at, raising awareness.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about the COVID, and maybe we'll actually, now I'm starting to delve into, I think, some of the Q&As. I think there's a question that has come up in relation to it. We keep hearing that gender-based violence has increased under the lockdown, not only in South Africa. This is a global issue, because yes, people are confined in tight spaces. They're confined with people who they know how to get away from, but under the lockdown, you can't get away. Is there anything, and maybe we'll do a quick round, but Basha, is there anything that you guys are doing under the lockdown to address the increase or the spike in cases?
So what we have done is we have nominated 3 social workers that are going out for all the cases of the children that are underage. So if you are under the ages of 16, this is where we make sure that a social worker is a part of the team that works with that particular case, especially where it concerns the child. Before lockdown, we know that a mother will be generally out there, maybe trying to stay at an uncle's place, at a grandma's place, and homes where gender-based violence is like a norm. The mother always survives like that. They migrate and move a lot around with the family, with the children. And so with lockdown, they're not able to go anywhere. And this is where we have seen that the worsening of the situation doesn't come from the fact that the abuse hasn't been there. It's coming from the fact that it's now a day-to-day. Because remember, the mother could go away with the children for a month or for 3 weeks, or maybe for the whole December school holidays. But now they are there in that part. They're confined to that home with the beatings on a daily basis, which is causing a problem medically. And this is how we get to know of the increased numbers, because of medical issues that arises around the physical abuse in most instances, yes. And now we see also a lot of women that have gotten killed, a lot of children that we've also seen recently where children have been killed. So that is basically what we're doing. We are assigning social workers to physically make sure that we have this kind of documentation coming to a docket, and so that we make sure that the law takes on the case hands-on, because now all eyes are on the case, in comparison to previously where you would just refer the family to go somewhere else and get help, if I could put it like that. But now we've got the eyes and the hands and everyone else looking into the case.
Okay, okay. And Mara, anything that you guys are doing exceptionally, please remember to unmute yourself. Is there anything you're doing differently under the lockdown in order to respond to the increased number of cases?
One of the things that we found in the third month of the lockdown, the new level, was that the women that wanted protection orders were not able to get them because unfortunately the courts were closed. So we did work with the SAPS to ensure that those women were safe. So sometimes it does pay to use an organization such as Basha's or ours to help you, because we know how to circumvent the obstacles in the path. So in fact, I do think that the court should have been open throughout the whole of the lockdown, even if it was on a skeleton staff. So essentially what we're saying is that we will help you be safe.
Yes.
Okay. So if we are to go back into level 5 lockdown, we know that court cases should remain part of the essential services that remain open. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're at 7:50. Are there any burning questions that are coming up from the Q&A that we can cover? And then I'm going to go around and ask for what your respective calls to action are as a panelist. I know that there is so much that we want to say. There's so many areas. Thando was saying, I'll talk about that later, I'll unpack it later, but we're really running out of time. It's been such an enjoyable conversation. So Valerie, any particular question that you think, from the people supporting us in the panel area, any particular questions that we should address before we go and do the round with the panelists as they make their call to action or their final statements to us?
I think the one question that came up, which is quite relevant to Basha, where she says, how do you deal with living in a society that looks down on the standard of beauty that you represent? A lot of questions around the sexualization of nudity and how people saw nudity in your headshot. Be interested to know how you approach that, Basha.
Yeah, actually, Basha, while you were gone, they didn't understand why you were perceived as being naked. And they also wanted to understand about your hairstyle. They love it, huh? And I know.
Yes, and by the way, when it comes to the hairstyle as well, a lot of people were saying that, a black woman that has got a bald head, she is sexualizing herself. She's very seductive when she shaves off her hair, because it's known that we must always wear a doek. We must cover our head. That is a form of respect. So for me to be so naked and not have hair on, and by the way, my hair was shaved because I work in a pediatric oncology field. So I work with children that have been diagnosed with cancer or blood disorders. So these are our children that are going through chemo and radiation, which is the two treatments that would make a child not have actually the opportunity to grow healthy hair up until a point where their treatment is completed. But I mean, it was not even intended for that. It was just now for me as a sister in the unit, in the ICU, for children to connect with me, to be able to see that we look the same. You see, you don't have hair, I don't have hair. So that is the relationship that I have with my little ones in the hospital. But to have seen that just a very innocent thing like that, to be looked at as, you are quite inviting, that is very seductive. You're going to have men are going to give you problems. And I must be honest with you, to Rita in the panel and everyone being a part of the conversation today, it has been a problem, because even when I go to the mall, the way the men look at me, it's suggesting that they are thinking, we could pass on comments because you have a bald hair. And even when I have makeup on, we still have a whole lot of other issues that we need to look into. And, being a part of the pageant for me personally was to make use of that bigger scale platform to talk about children, to talk about how our children are being abused, and also to bring into attention the fact that when children are born with disabilities, those are the children that actually get sexually assaulted. And this is actually a fact that a lot of people doesn't know in society. And these are the marginalized, and these are children that cannot speak for themselves. Cases never make it to court, if I can put it like that, because the family in itself is ashamed of the fact that they have a child, that they are already stigmatized by society, that they have a child that has disabilities, and they're living with disabilities, and now the child is sexually assaulted or they're abused in different forms. I mean, some children get locked in houses, they get locked in wardrobes, and all these other horrific things that we hear. But one thing that we know is that we have seen young girls with cerebral palsy, born with Down syndrome, that are pregnant at the age of 13, 14. So who is raping our children? Because we have to see them in hospital. And when I raised awareness with issues such as that, you start seeing people think to themselves, but I mean, the child is disabled, so it's not like the child can feel anything. People say such things. And sometimes it's even women that say that, I mean, this child is very naughty. We know this child that is, she's so and so and so. She's very naughty. She likes to play with the boys. And this is the women that are actually saying it's okay for men of a sane mind to abuse a girl that is not in a sane state, to even make a decision, let alone consensual sex, because already they are born, with such a lot of, difficulties psychologically, apart from the age. So the conversation around having to deal with me being bold and putting my image on Instagram and every day dealing with the bullying continues to be a conversation, because I use this moment right here as a platform to say, yes, you can call me a name, give me a name, and feel free to do that, because that is what you perceive a woman of my age, of my status, it's uncalled for, because people are saying, why do you want to complain that they are actually men that are treating you this way? Because you are inviting of them, I mean, you're not even dressed. So I'm using this platform right here and now to say, yes, I am bold, and yes, I can put makeup on, and yes, I could be wearing a bra, but what warrants, a man to rape a child? Because what are they wearing? What makeup do they have on? And what revealing clothes do they have if they're 6 months old? If they are born with disabilities, what then warrants? What could have been a seductive thing that child could have had? Because we are trying to address gender-based violence.
Brother, thank you for talking about these things honestly, because we hear those comments, the one about that girl, that child is naughty. It happens. So it's really, I think, I'm hoping it's making us think. I'm reading a comment here. There's someone in the chat, he Kamogelo, and he says, as a teenage boy, I've certainly learned a lot from the brave and inspiring women on my screen. Your powerful words have opened up my mind on gender-based violence, and I will definitely keep fighting against it. I think this is what we wanted. Initially, we thought it was only women that were going to sign up, but we actually have, a number of men joining us, and for them to be able to hear that, I think this is the schooling that Zozi was talking about. We need to start having these very honest, open dialogues as early as possible. He's a teenage boy. He should have heard this earlier on, but at least we are catching him, before he becomes a full-grown male.
And,
okay,
and Rita, just to also say that if I become afraid to put my picture as a profile picture, if I'm afraid to do that, then it means that, we will never get to the bottom of this. Me cowering behind the fact that I won't put this picture on social media, I'm basically, allowing myself to conform under the societal norms that we're currently, the norms that are actually perpetuating violence against women and children.
Which is what we try to address at Girls4Girls. I keep on saying one of my favorite modules is the one on courageous leadership, whereby you cannot sit by. You must be able to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to stand, I'm not going to stand by and take it. Okay, so we're coming close to 8 p.m. I'm so sorry. We're going to have to cut this conversation short. I think in future, we promise to do better. We're going to have to figure out how to have such valuable discussions in a kind of like a comprehensive manner. So I'm going to go around to the panelists, and I'll start with Thando, who was panelist number 1. Your parting shots. What are the parting words you would like to leave with the audience? Similar to what I asked Zozi, what is your call to action? Thando, your microphone is off. Huh? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Rita. So The first thing I want to do is to just make a closing remark and then close to a call to action. So first of all, a summary of what I've said. Number one, all Black lives matter. Number two, don't be satisfied with just taking up space. And this is kind of where I want to challenge Zozi, because as women, we have always taken up space. We are the majority population on the planet. We inherently take up space. What we need to do is we need to lead the spaces, own the spaces, and if necessary, create the spaces. And when we do become the people who lead, own, and create these new spaces, we must make sure that we are driven by the principles of intersectional feminism and equity. If you want to know what intersectional feminism and equity are, please visit the Ubuntu Studies Online Academy. I'm going to leave the information there. So
it's already part of the pack. It's part of the pack.
Yes. So in terms of the call to action, practical things, and this is what I specialize in. I actually have been working for the past 3 years on a curriculum to get into schools. And that's what I've been doing when I've been going around the world. The government doesn't want to implement this thing. So Ubuntu Studies is a rebellion and a protest against the lack of desire for the government to want to teach gender equity and systematic racism in schools. So, you know, we need to create our own spaces, and that's what Umthetho search engine is, and that's what Ubuntu Online Academy is. And we also need to call out bad behavior. I challenge everyone to call out the fact that Patrick Shai, who is a woman abuser, is being paid to go around the country to go and speak about the fact that he used to abuse women when he hasn't served a day in prison. We need to encourage women to go and serve in parliament. And as a politician myself, it is important for me to encourage other girls to go and stand for office and to even create their own political parties if the ones that exist don't represent their values. We also need to acknowledge the fact that gender-based violence is a public health crisis. It is not something to just be shoved over to the Department of Women, and therefore all ministries need to be involved. Data is a very important part of the fight against gender-based violence, and I'm happy to be a part of that and to be doing that, but we all need to be part of mining data regarding gender-based violence. The final thing that I would say is that we need to have education also within legal education in universities. You will be shocked to find that as a law student, I was never taught about gender-based violence, and I was never taught about systematic racism in university and even in practice today. I want to challenge the Legal Practice Council, the General Bar Council, all institutions of higher learning. The teaching of our racialized history as well as patriarchy in our society must be standardized in our institutions of higher learning, and especially be specialized in legal education. That's why you've got judges that are patriarchal. That's why you've got lawyers who can say to a victim of gender-based violence, how far did he put his penis in your vagina? Because they were never sensitized to be respectful and to see other people as human beings. There's a lot more things that I can say, but please go to the Ubuntu Studies Academy. That is where the dismantling of white heteropatriarchy is actively being done in this country.
Thank you, Thando. And that actually means that when Zozi talks about the curriculum, maybe that's a starting point, because you've already started working.
That's what I've been doing. If Zozi wants to collaborate, then we can do that. But I've been doing that for years now.
Yeah, no, thank you. And when I saw it, I watched the videos and I was like, it definitely, that's when we thought we're going to create a pack. And then, Mara came along with the Tears flyer and the apps and things like that. And we thought to ourselves, we have to get this pack out there. So thank you, Thando. Okay, Mara, what are your parting shots? What is your call to action? What is your final statement?
First of all, I want to say, Basha, Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I put it on the cover of my magazine anytime. Block your ears, don't listen to them. Carry on, I'm so proud of you. Then on my call to action, I've just made our next PSA. You saw our past one today, which is It's Up to Us. And I've done a call to men to please be involved in taking a stand against women for gender-based violence. We have used a person representing each race as they did in the march, because Aunt Sophie was in our last PSA. So we've used all 4 of the races that were in the march, symbolically men speaking out against abuse. I'm going to ask all of you to send your WhatsApp addresses so that we can send you a copy, everyone watching, when we launch it. It'll be launched within a week. So the next thing is speak out. That's my message. Speak out. If you've been raped or abused and something that's happened, we are here to help you. And I just want to reiterate, we help everybody. It doesn't matter what color, what religion, what age, young or old, black or white, etc., etc. We are here for you because we believe all lives matter.
Thank you very much. Or what gender, right? Everyone is covered at Tears.
Absolutely, 100%.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, Basha, you're the final panelist.
Yes, so my final word is on just to add on to the curriculum, for myself as well, over the period of 4 years when I did my nursing studies, there was never, not even once, where gender-based violence was a part of anything that was given some form of attention. It was just, a few chapters on sociology that we had to just cram, just make sure you know this and this and that, and just pass and out you go. You are done for 4 years and you never look back. However, the reality is the same way as Thando could speak about, the legal aspect of gender-based violence. I'm stronger in the health fraternity because I'm the sister that you would find in the clinic. I'm the sister that you would find in the trauma unit. And I'm the sister that actually has to be more equipped and be more diverse as well when it comes to, issues around gender-based violence. Because often we find that the problem as well comes in when a person goes to the clinic to also report, to seek attention, to seek medical attention when it comes to gender-based violence. Not only just the sexual part of things. I mean, if you have been assaulted, physically assaulted, we need evidence. We need that documentation of medical records and legal papers that are signed by professionals, and they document the event as it is, which is what makes our cases stronger in court. We need all the other intermediary team members, the professionals, to come together and work together as a team. So I am more excited about the curriculum part of things, and I'm more than happy to be a part of any movement that is going to come forward and say, look, this is the curriculum that we want to put in place. And I would get all the professional nurses, all the women that you will find, both men and women, that you would find, wearing their marine epaulets so that they could come and join the force, because legally that is what gives us a strong hand when it comes to litigating cases with medical evidence. And my word is, like, on the 26th of July, that is next week on Sunday, we have the legacy program for girls. So all the girls globally can register on that platform. We've got also different mentors, and the advantage of this platform is also to educate women and men generally about how to be of support in a home. So we are not sending you to the police station or to the woman next door or to the community leader. The support is going to start at home. So we are going to be addressing the support from home, because we want to bring the sense of hope to families. We want to bring, a sense of knowing that we will one day combat, this big thing that is in front of us, and it's tough, but if we do it well, we are most definitely going to win. And the baton that we pass on to our children is the legacy that we will leave for them to be able to live a better life.
Thank you. I don't even know how we're going to take it forward, but this is not going to stop here. We have the African founder for Girls4Girls is part of this call. We are going to have to figure out how to keep this conversation going. We have people from all over the world. I think that I saw Australia, I saw Pakistan, and the people I expected: Kenya, Uganda, Zambia, Zimbabwe. Those are our sisters. We engage with them all the time. Honduras, Jamaica, Guinea-Bissau. So the Eswatini, so there's clearly a hunger for this. The challenge is going to be, how we logically take it forward. So I promise you, as Girls for Girls, we are not dropping this off our agenda. We're going to try and figure out how we make sure that the dialogue continues and that we are actively doing something. We're not just talking about it. There's so many questions that have gone unanswered. So the proposition is that we are going to send the panelists the unanswered questions, especially those that have been directed. We will get the responses and those will be shared with the participants. There's a feedback form that you're all going to receive, all the participants are going to receive, that is going to ask you whether or not you want to hear from us again. And if you say yes, you will start, you will be able to receive the information that we are talking about, and as well as future dialogues that might be, that will be happening around this issue. So as we close, I'd like to say thank you. I'd like to say thank you first to the 4 panelists. Thank you for a thrilling discussion. To the G4G support team, Valerie, Karima, Rivka, Kinelwe, Sinclair, thank you so much for all the behind the scenes work. To the BNI team who are hosting this webinar that facilitated the logistics of this call. Diana, thank you very much. And then Sam, who none of you guys have seen, but he's been the engine behind it all. And then to all the participants from around the world, thank you very much. G4G says thank you. Have a lovely evening or have a lovely afternoon wherever you are in the world. God bless.